Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
My dog went flying through the air over the tree, and I don't know how it did it.
Okay.
Deep in Bigfoot territory. Episode 36, Oklahoma's Abominable Ape-Man. This is a Squatch Mafia documentary. Welcome to this episode of Bigfoot territory. In today's episode, we are going to travel again into rural Oklahoma and visit places like the Ozarks, the Kiamichi Mountains, and the Ouachita National Forest, as we are going to take a deep dive into a fascinating case from central Oklahoma and explore the history of Bigfoot in the wider region. In 1970 and 1971, a series of strange events made front-page headlines in local newspapers around Reno and Oklahoma City, describing a creature local reporters dubbed the Abominable Chicken Man. The story was picked up by newspapers and reported on radio stations from coast to coast. Let's take a look at this spectacular case. On a cold winter morning in late December 1970, a farmer outside El Reno in rural Oklahoma found his chicken coop destroyed, and all of his chickens were missing. The door of the coop had been torn off its hinges, and bloody handprints covered the door and the interior of the coop. This event would later give its name to one of the most fascinating Bigfoot stories ever to come from the southern United States, the El Reno Chicken Man. But the saga of the Abominable Chicken Man began already a month earlier, in the fall of 1970. On the night of November 13th, two hunters were sitting in their car in the woods north of El Reno to warm up. The car was parked east of the Foreman Road Bridge, along the south bank of the North Canadian River. It was a cold night, with a full moon and snow covering the ground. The moonlight reflected off the snow and provided good visibility. It was around 2 in the morning when the hunters noticed a skunk running out of the underbrush toward their car, seemingly hiding underneath it. One of the men, a retired police officer, military veteran, and active scoutmaster, got out of the car to look for the skunk. As the hunter left the car, he immediately felt as if he was being watched. The man later recounted that the hair on his neck stood straight up and that something was definitely not right. Looking over his shoulder toward the riverbank, he saw a large black shadow standing behind a tree. While still trying to figure out what the shadow was, the hunter saw 2 large red eyes appear approximately 7 feet above the ground. At first, the man thought he was looking at 2 reflectors nailed to a tree. But then the eyes began to blink, and the man called for his friend to come out of the car too and watch. At that moment, the giant shadow began to slide off the bank down towards the riverbed. The hunters said it sounded like a huge refrigerator was crushing through the underbrush before splashing into the river. The men immediately ran to get a better look at the river, as they saw a tall, upright walking animal running in a zigzag pattern from sandbar to sandbar toward the west. They observed the creature from a distance of about 25 yards and described it as black or very dark in color and extremely tall, probably 8 feet or taller, with a wide, thick-looking body. The men were startled by the speed demonstrated by the subject as it fled up the sandy riverbed of the North Canadian River. They said they were able to watch the creature for about 30 seconds before it disappeared back into the brush. The hunters described the animal as a tall, upright walking gorilla, and later stated, "We just stood there with our jaws hanging open. We were totally shocked by what we were seeing." The encounter in November 1970 took place in the woods north of El Reno, on the banks of the North Canadian River, on the west side of the old Foreman Road Bridge at Highway 81, only a few miles east of where the Abominable Chicken Man would leave the first physical evidence of his existence a month later, in December 1970. The estimated distance between the forest where the hunters had their encounter and the first appearance of the El Reno Chicken Man is less than 20 miles. On the morning of the 30th of December, a farmer outside of El Reno discovered that the chicken coop on his farm had been destroyed. His chickens were missing, and the door of the coop had been ripped from its hinges and thrown to the ground. Large, bloody handprints were found on the door and inside the coop, and strange tracks were left in the snow all around it. The farmer called the local game warden, confused about what had attacked the coop, but assuming some sort of hungry animal was on the prowl. The game warden arrived a few hours later, but could not identify the strange tracks and handprints that resembled giant human prints. But bare human feet and handprints in late December seemed odd. The warden measured the handprints, which turned out to be 7 inches long and 5 inches wide, too large, especially too wide, for a human hand. Also, it appeared that whatever made the tracks was walking both, on all fours, as well as upright. The game warden had no logical explanation for what destroyed the coop and took all the chickens, but said it looked as if a chimpanzee or a gorilla had attacked the chicken coop. In turn, the Oklahoma City Zoo was contacted. One of the best preserved prints of the bloody giant hand was on the door of the chicken coop. The door was photographed and then shipped to the Oklahoma City Zoo, where the director of the zoo, primatologist Lawrence Curtis, was asked to identify the handprints. Curtis compared the prints with the hands and paws of humans, apes, monkeys, bears, and other animals. According to Curtis, the creature's thumb crooks inward, as if deformed or injured. He believed the prints had been left by a primate of some kind, but he was puzzled by its size and its overall appearance, and admitted his bafflement. "I don't know what this is," Curtis stated. "It resembles a gorilla, but it's more like a man. We've shown it to several mammalogists and several wildlife experts in Oklahoma, as well as some passing through. All agree it is a primate," he continued. Curtis noted that there were only 3 known animals in the state of Oklahoma, with sufficient size and strength to rip a sturdy door from its hinges: bears and mountain lions, both of which were ruled out, and human beings, though a human could simply have opened the door. Additionally, 5 inches would be exceptionally wide for a human hand. Moreover, humans don't walk around barefoot in Oklahoma in December, especially not on all fours. These prints were made by some sort of primate, possibly a man with extremely large hands and a deformed thumb, Curtis stated. Other than admitting the culprit was a man-like creature, he declined to speculate. For years, Curtis, who remained Oklahoma City's zoo director until 1984, kept the door of the coop in his office for reference and as a piece of conversation. He never identified the primate that tore the door from its hinges. The whereabouts of the door are unknown today. None of the tracks outside the coop have survived since 1970 either. Cryptozoologist and Bigfoot researcher Loren Coleman later exchanged letters on the matter with the zoo director. Curtis told Coleman he was frankly baffled. He found the thumb of the print quite unusual, as it was crooked, as if deformed or injured. Curtis thought it was from a primate, but was uncertain what kind of primate it was. Coleman then interviewed the famed anthropologist Carlton Kuhn on the handprint. Kuhn also felt the track was definitely made by a higher primate. Loren Coleman later wrote about the case of the Oklahoma Chicken Man in 2 books: Creatures of the Outer Edge from 1978 and Mysterious America from 1983, from which most of the information in this documentary was taken. After the release of the newspaper articles in January and February 1971, letters from across the country arrived at the zoo director's office. "A tremendous amount of material has come in," Curtis said at the time. Many of the communications contained photographs or drawings of footprints left by mysterious creatures sighted in other parts of the United States and Canada. But 2 letters from Oklahoma stood out to the zoo director, as similar handprints were reported in them. A man from Stillwater, 100 miles northeast of El Reno, had encountered similar prints on his property. A woman from McAllister in southeast Oklahoma mailed photos of similar prints to the Oklahoma City Zoo for comparison. In February 1971, a reporter of the Oklahoma Journal got in contact with a man named Howard Dreesen, who operated a sawmill in Calumet, Oklahoma, 13 miles west of El Reno. In an article entitled "Hen House Terror Just Monkey Stuff," Dreesen told a fascinating story in which, during a 3-year period from 1967 to 1970, he tried to capture a large chimpanzee in the forests near Calumet, west of El Reno. He left out bananas and oranges for the animal, which he described as a chimpanzee, and hoped to capture it with a heavy net he kept in his pickup truck, but never managed to do so. Dreesen stated he had seen the large chimpanzee several times at dusk in the forests. But his strategy to catch the creature with fruit and a net never worked out. The story was mentioned in several other articles on the El Reno Chicken Man. Dreesen said he believed the animal had escaped from a circus train derailment in Mulhall, Oklahoma, a statement which is of course pointless. Let's read a short excerpt from an article published in March 1971 in the Oklahoma Journal, entitled "Farmers Hunt Chicken Man," about the attempts of zoo director Lawrence Curtis to identify the handprints of the Abominable Chicken Man. The article reads, "Curtis says the prints appear to be like those of a primate. A primate is an animal like a gorilla or a man that can stand erect. The thumb of the print is unusual. Curtis says it crooks inside, as if it were deformed or had been injured. It resembles a gorilla," he said, "but it's more like a man. It appears that whatever made the prints was walking on all fours. There were some footprints on the ground outside," he said. "Whatever it was barefoot. Barefoot in December." Since Curtis got the first print, he has reports of similar finds around the state. A man in Stillwater and a woman in McAllister have told him of discovering similar prints. The woman has a photograph she is mailing to the zoo for comparison. Oklahoma has only 4 native animals big enough to leave such prints: black bears, mountain lions, wolves, and man. Curtis has ruled out all but the last. "We've shown it to several mammalogists and several wildlife experts in Oklahoma. All agree it is a primate," he said. The case of the abominable El Reno Chicken Man was, of course, never solved, and disappeared from local newspapers after a few months. But Oklahoma does indeed have many other hotspots of Bigfoot activity, and the wider region has a number of other well-documented and famous Sasquatch stories, going back centuries, especially southeast Oklahoma, with places like the Ozarks, the Ouachita National Forest, and the Kiamichi Mountains, has a long-running history of Bigfoot activity, dating back to the arrival of native tribes like the Choctaw and the Caddo in the 1830s. LaFleur County, roughly 180 miles southeast of Oklahoma City in the Ouachita National Forest, is notorious for Bigfoot stories and encounters, especially among the native Choctaw population. The most famous historic story from LaFleur County is the so-called Bigfoot War of 1855, which tells of numerous raids on farms and native settlements by eerie, Sasquatch-like creatures. See the links in the video description for an episode of Bigfoot Territory on the stories from LaFleur County. Another well-known location in southeast Oklahoma's Bigfoot lore is the small town of Honobia in the Kiamichi Mountains. Today, the town is best known for an incident in the late 1990s, known as the Siege of Honobia. Beginning in the fall of 1999, 2 brothers and their families, who lived in a rural homestead outside Honobia, experienced a series of incidents and encounters with Bigfoot-like beings on their property. The brothers, Tim and Mike Humphreys, who used the large forested property in the Kiamichi Mountains for hunting, reported that at first the carcasses of deer were stolen before their homestead was attacked several times at night. The situation became more threatening throughout winter of 1999 and escalated into several violent nights in January of 2000, in which shots were fired at the creatures multiple times as they tried to get into the house of the families. Legend has it that the brothers and their families left the farm and the region in spring of 2000, as they finally fled their home in the middle of the night, leaving most of their belongings, including their furniture and a full refrigerator, behind. You can also find a link to a Bigfoot Territory episode on the Siege of Honobia in the video description. Today, Honobia is known for its annual Bigfoot Festival, which is held every October and is widely known in the Bigfoot community. The Ozarks, the Ouachita Mountains, and the Kiamichi Mountains have of course remained hotspots of Bigfoot activity until today. The North American Wood Ape Conservancy has one of its main research areas in the Ouachita National Forest. The wider region has numerous well-known Bigfoot hotspots, such as the swamps of Miller County in western Arkansas, home to the Falk Monster and the legend of Boggy Creek, just 300 miles southeast of Oklahoma City. Notorious places of Bigfoot activity in East Texas, including Lake Worth and the Big Thicket, are situated just 200 miles south of El Reno in central Oklahoma. Interestingly, footage exists that was recorded on private property near Paris in East Texas, in the Big Thicket, that appears to show a massive, gorilla-like creature entering a fenced farm, allegedly to raid a chicken coop. This scene could very well be identical to the incident of the El Reno Chicken Man, roughly 200 miles further north. The footage was captured by legendary Bigfoot researcher M.K. Davis during a long-term investigation on the property in the Big Thicket, and the creature shown in the video indeed seems to be enormous. A size comparison with the fence and with a photo of M.K. Davis suggests that the creature might be 7.5 to 8 feet tall. See the links in the video description for the entire clip, and for episodes of Bigfoot Territory on Lake Worth in East Texas, and on the Falk Monster from Boggy Creek in western Arkansas. The story of the Abominable Chicken Man of El Reno and the bloody, gorilla-like handprints remains a barely remembered but highly fascinating tale of early Bigfoot lore in the region. What is your opinion on the El Reno Chicken Man and the history of Bigfoot in Oklahoma? Let me know in the comments. Hit the like button if you have enjoyed this episode of Bigfoot Territory. Subscribe to the Squatch Mafia channel at YouTube for more videos on Bigfoot and Sasquatch. Check out Squatch Mafia at Patreon and TikTok for extra content. Thank you for watching.